just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. I'm Joe DeLeone, joined by Ryan Roberts. We're moving on our next cornerback comparison show, or scouting report show, rather. We already did Kaylee Ringo and we did Eli Ricks. We are moving on to a distinct pairing amongst the corner group of Garrett Williams from Syracuse and Clark Phillips from Utah. Coincidentally, Ryan, actually not coincidentally, I'm sure you did this intentionally when we decided on these pairings. These are two guys that were number 8, and they both came on the show. They were both participants in our interviews.
Believe it or not, Joe, I did not do that on purpose. I was looking for two players that were notable players at the top of this class that were of similar body types. That is why this pairing happened. It just so happens they wear the same number and they both came on the show. So those things are coincidental. All right.
Okay.
I did not plan this. Did not plan this.
The only reason why I pushed back is I was just saying this to you before we started recording. I still don't think that they have necessarily similar body types.
They're both 5'10", 5'11", 180 something pound corners, man. Like, who else was I going to compare Clark Phillips to in this class? I mean,
well, I'm not knocking you for that. I'm just saying that I think Clark Phillips is smaller than you're giving him credit for.
Well, I can only go by his listed measurement because unfortunately for us, Clark Phillips is only a third-year player, so he wasn't on NFS or Blesto, so we don't have a legit height weight for him yet.
Shame on you for not flying to Utah with a tape measurer for the preparation of this show.
Well, the great thing is that they are both friends of the show, so I guess I could just text Clark and be like, "Hey, what's your actual height?"
He's not gonna tell you,
sir. I'm in the media. All I have to say is off the record. He's like, yeah, man. I'll tell you.
Yeah, but then you could only tell me, and then I might blurt it out on the show.
That's true. Yeah, you put out so much secret information. I listened
That's not true.
I listened to Believe in FCS show, and you're like, "Oh man, NFS has this kid as this grade and that grade."
Am I not supposed to share that information? You didn't tell me I couldn't.
You can. I mean, it's out there, man. So like, it's not like you don't. It's not like you have to keep it secretive. But
one, you didn't tell me you couldn't, and two, what I'm doing at least requires more effort. Of like, I'll do the research on the guys, and then I use the grades to supplement the information on the FCS show. A lot of idiots will write articles, and a lot of reputable idiots will write articles just based on the numbers that they pull from that list and won't watch any film. Jack Brasky.
Oh, that's so mean. That's so mean. Or, what else will happen is that someone will publish the list of the NFS grades.
Yeah.
Who was it? It was somebody very reputable. I forget who it was that posted it. You know what I'm talking about, though? He literally posted the whole...
an angry NFL draft scout got mad.
Angry NFL draft scout gets mad at the draft dudes guys for discussing something that was publicly published.
Yeah, I think it might have been Marino or Krabs.
And honestly, I would have done the same thing. Like, that was readily available to the masses. It was put out publicly. It's not Joe or Kyle's fault that this was put out into the universe.
Yeah.
Like, get a life, aggregate NFL draft scout. I hope you listen to this podcast too, you fraud.
I don't think he does.
He doesn't. He's too busy. He's too busy being great at scouting and stuff. Because I've been in the game for 30 years. Shut up, dude.
It's really Dave Gettleman. I firmly believe it's Dave Gettleman.
Yeah, I think I actually know who it is.
I know you've told me. We've discussed. My second hunch is it's Dave Gettleman. That's where I stand.
That'd be way funnier if it was Dave Gettleman. If I'm being honest,
because he's such an oaf, but on the internet he's actually a real tactile.
What if it's David Turner secretly?
All right, enough conspiracy theories. Ryan,
yes.
If you want to bet, we've actually got, holy crap, Ryan, we've got the next round of preseason games this week. So if you want to bet on those because you're a total degen like I am, and you're fiending to bet on some football games, go to Bet Online, where you can find the place for the fastest and easiest way to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, and even with the first to market odds and lines. Never fails to have the most awkwardly worded sentences in this read. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, now NFL preseason, as well as NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join today and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Ryan, let's start with Clark Phillips. And I need to be doing a better job of this. Of course, it takes me till now to make an effort to do this at the very end of us doing these scouting series. But I'd like to set you up first, talk about Clark Phillips and his background. What do we need to know about him before we go into breaking him down?
Yeah, I mean, a couple interesting notes. And of course, we've had both these guys on the show, like Joe kind of said earlier on. So,
by the way, go check out those interviews. They've been two of our most highly viewed videos, especially the Clark Phillips one this cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say that if you want a really more in-depth piece on the backgrounds, I would definitely take a look. But I mean, kind of the de facto background report, Joe, just kind of a little glimpse into him is he is a third-year player, technically a junior because he's played 2 years, but he is going to be listed as a redshirt sophomore because of the COVID year, which was his freshman year. So he only played in a few football games as a true freshman, but he was a former high 4-star caliber player out of La Habra High School in Lakewood, California, originally committed, Joe, to Ohio State, actually. He decommitted from Ohio State and ended up going to Utah. And honestly,
hear that happening.
Yeah, man, it's very strange. It's very strange. And I actually know, well, I'll put it on the universe. It's fine. It's been discussed before by me and Brian on the Irish Breakdown show. But Notre Dame was a school that actually Clark Phillips liked a lot, but the former defensive coordinator, Mike Elko, at the time, who was recruiting him, thought that Clark Phillips wasn't long enough to play at a high-level school. So that was a pretty bad take by Mike Elko, although I really do like Mike Elko. But anyway, ends up at Utah, which I love the fit, man, just from my personal perspective, because I really respect the job that Kyle Whittingham does and Morgan Scalley does on the defensive side of the football. And Clark is that kind of, and I know we're not going too much into the film right now, but like technician is what really pops off to me. And he's a hard worker. And I think that being a part of that Utah Utes program has been great for him. And he's a kid that the minute he stepped on campus, he was a starting player for the Utah Utes for a team that is usually very more like upperclassmen laden. Like that's usually the players that play a lot of football. But from day one, he's been a starter for Utah, coming off of a dynamic All-American caliber season last year, 2 interceptions, 13 pass breakups, 63 tackles. So it's been a standout ever since he got there, but a very interesting, a little bit backstory from the recruiting side, originally committed to Ohio State. And man, Ohio State, I'm sure, wishes that they had him right now, but other conversation for another day.
So I don't disagree, or rather I disagree on the sense that he's not long enough to play at a high level, but I can understand that assumption by Elko because the length is something that I highlighted as a concern. This is somebody who's listed at 5'10", and I was arguing back and forth, not really arguing, but like discussing back and forth.
He was yelling at me,
screaming. Yeah. I think this is a guy that's probably closer to 5'9" and a hair, somewhere around that range. I'd be curious to see how long his arms are because he probably has decently sized arms for his size. I think he definitely makes up for it, though. Like, those concerns are not completely eradicated, but at least dampened because he has really good technique and he understands positioning very, very well. The one thing that I was asking myself when watching him, because like he checks every box as like as a coverage corner, as a guy who can cover guys a man, and he shows a lot of really good flashes. And again, the positioning is fantastic. Might be the best out of the guys that we've watched so far on a consistent basis. But if he was 6'2", we'd be talking about him as like a first round lock.
Top 10 pick.
Yeah, top
6'2". Yeah.
Right. But conversely, I wonder, is this a guy that's mostly going to win in the slot at the next level? Is that where his value is mostly because of that size limitation? Can we trust him to play outside guarding a Mike Evans?
I don't have any concerns with him playing outside, if I'm being honest, because the things that I think separate Clark Phillips is, one, mean, you mentioned it, Joe. Before the show started, he is a very densely built kid, man. Like
yes,
he is
very, very compact.
He's physically well put together, though. Like, I mean, even if you watch him on film, like he is just a muscular young man who clearly spends a lot of time in the weight room, and he can match physicality as a player. And I think when you turn on the Ohio State film, for instance, the kid has a forced fumble, deep pass breakup against Jackson Smith and Jigba, and he has an interception where he was running stride for stride with Jackson Smith and Jigba in the end zone and comes up with the interception with the great body positioning, like you're saying. So I think from a technical perspective, from a physicality perspective, he can last outside, and he is a good enough athlete. I think he's a high 4.4 type of player. So I would say like 4.47, 4.48, which isn't incredible when you consider the fact that he may be 5'9.5". But I think that he is a player that is going to be similarly built as like there's slightly different body types. But he gives me Tre'Davious White vibes, where it's like Tre'Davious White is not the most physically imposing player from a height speed combination.
But he plays
not
physically.
He plays incredibly physical and above his size. And I think that he can last inside. But the great thing I like about Clark Phillips is, to your point, I think he can work inside at nickel at times. He's one of those kids that I think outside corner, but then also can match up with kids moving inside in the slot. So like if he's working against a player, let's say it's I don't want to say a Cooper Kupp, but like a Antonio Brown style player, right? Where it's like Antonio Brown can play outside, he can play inside, but he's not the biggest kid in the world. I think Clark Phillips is the kind of player that can match up inside because he mirrors really well in coverage. He's not a press man corner, but he can play off man because he has good change of direction and short area stuff. And he just gets himself in the proper position all the time. And he has really good ball skills, and he just plays a physical brand of football. So I'm in on Clark Phillips, man. I think that there's going to be some people that are going to kind of look past and say like, but he's only 5'9.5", 5'10", somewhere in that ballpark. But if it's not an issue on film, I'm not going to make it an issue, right? Like I don't think that the size limits him much. I think at times, the short steps working vertically might be able to hurt him a little bit because he doesn't have great stride length. But for the most part, like I did not see an issue on film where I was like, that size is a deterrence for him. I think that it's one of those things where he plays bigger than his size. So I think Clark Phillips is an outside corner that can also play inside. And I think he's one of the best corners that I've watched this week so far, man. I think he's excellent.
So I'm going to be a little bit of a hack. I feel that he is a top 50 pick. I'm slightly hung up on the size thing, which is why I'm not willing to bump him into the first round. If the guy had 2 more inches, I would be willing to bump him into the first round. If he was 5'11", 6 foot, it'd be an easier sell for me. But because of that, and just it's a question mark. I don't think I can say for certainty that he is someone who can succeed at the next level. There is a chance that eventually he could get bumped inside. Like that's what I saw on tape just because of his height. Yeah. Again, it still doesn't limit it somehow doesn't limit him, which is odd. It's kind of like what who was the Pitt defensive tackle that we talked about?
Oh, Kalijah Cansey.
It's kind of like the Kalijah Cansey argument, except this is a little bit easier to figure out because you don't need to be 6'2" to play corner and be good. Kalijah Cansey is very much of an outlier, but it's kind of like in a similar vein of it's odd trying to fully project him because he plays really freaking well and he does a really good job if only he was a little bit bigger. I think he's a top 50 pick, but I'm not bumping him into the first round in terms of his projection. Size
matters for me at corner. It does. But I think that we have seen some guys like a Jair Alexander and Denzel Ward of the world that have kind of, they're two of the better. I would say that both of them are top 5 corners in the NFL right now.
But aren't they both 5'11"?
Nah, man. Denzel is barely 5'10", I think. And Jair, I think, is like the same. I don't think he's very tall at all, if I remember correctly, when he measured in. Like those guys are both, I think, sub 5'11" corners.
Yeah, it says Jair's 5'10".
Yeah, and then Denzel's definitely 5'10". He might even be shorter than that. He's not a big guy.
Curious on Denzel Ward.
Yeah, man, he's even smaller than Jair. I'll tell you that.
Exactly. Oh man, no, it says he's 5'11".
There's no way he's 5'11", Joe. We're gonna go to the combine stuff here.
I pulled up his combine numbers.
Tell me.
5'11".
Nope. I'm proving you wrong right now, sir.
It says I'm on the combine page.
What combine page? There's ones that matter and there's ones that matter.
The NFL.com combine
no, that's wrong.
Page. Those
numbers
it rounds
up. It rounds up. It rounds up on the height. It rounds up on the height. It rounds up on the height. I'm going to combineresults.com. He was 70.88 inches, which means 72 would be 6 foot, right? So 71 would be, yep. So he is 5'10" and 7/8 or some ballpark stuff. So he's sub 5'11". He's sub 5'11", Joe.
Jair was a late first-round pick, so I don't think me saying Clark Phillips is a top 50 pick, I don't think that's too far off. But Denzel Ward, like, I don't think that Clark Phillips is a 4.3 guy like Denzel Ward is. Do you think so?
He's not. No, he's not.
So the speed thing I can't directly compare, or not compare to. They're obviously not the same prospect. I can't give Clark Phillips that heavy of a nudge because he's probably closer to a mid 4.4, maybe high, like low 4.4, maybe close to 4.5 40 guy, because he's not like freaky fast. He moves well, but he's not like super fluid.
I said like 4.47, 4.48, somewhere in that ballpark. Yeah. Like I think the short area stuff's gonna be good though. Like I think the change of direction numbers are gonna be great. Which again, man, if he fits inside at nickel a decent amount of the next level, it's fine. It's a base player at this point, you know. Like teams just don't play sub more than they play base most of the time now. So it's a very valuable player. I am all the way in on Clark Phillips, more than you are. I'll tell you that. Like I know we're going to talk more about the projection at the end of the show, but he'll be in a first round mock for me here pretty soon. I like him that much.
Wait, so talk about the projection now, because we don't always do that. Where do you see him? Like, where would you build him?
He's going to be in somewhere in the 20 to 32 range for me in a first round mock.
Okay,
that's where he's going to be. I mean, you could sell, like if you told me no, I actually think he's an early second round pick, I'd be like, that's fine. I can get there. Like I think he's a late first, early second round type of player ultimately right now.
Okay, I don't think we're too far off then, because that's kind of what I'm saying is early second round.
I was going to say, though, I think that you're more on like the early to mid second round type of range for Clark comparative to like late first-ish.
Okay. Well, that's fair.
That's fair.
The other guy that we have is a little bit of a perplexing evaluation. Garrett Williams from Syracuse.
Yes.
Much leaner than Clark Phillips, a little bit taller. We think that he's probably closer to 180 instead of him being 189. Very good accelerator, Ryan, and we're going to get to talk about him, but what's your background that you have on Garrett Williams, if any?
Yeah, no, so he's out of Hickory Ridge High School in Harrisburg, North Carolina, the same hometown, I believe, as Jair Alexander. I think that we talked about a little bit about that on the interview, so that's actually a guy that he has kind of emulated his game around a little bit, which makes a lot of sense if you kind of watch him on film. So, Joe, he was a extremely underrated recruit. I'm pretty sure he was like 3-star, some 2-star background as far as a recruit. He told me that he showed up to Syracuse at about 160, 165 pounds. So like he was very, very skinny coming out of high school. And now he is, a little bigger. He's lean, but interesting body type, because I actually do think he has decent length for his size, though. Like he's only 5'11", but like I would guess his arms are probably around 31 inches or so. So he's got better length, I think, than Clark Phillips in this comparison show a little bit. And but he definitely is not as physically put together as Clark is. But interesting background, because he is a under-recruited player that has kind of developed into the player he is now. But he had, redshirt freshman year, he was in a secondary that had Andre Cisco, who I liked a lot, that I think he's going to be starting for the Jaguars this year, and Tro Williams, who had some other people that liked him a ton. He was the best player in that secondary in 2020 by a landslide. 2021, he had another good year. He had like 50-something tackles, 10 pass breakups, no interceptions as a sophomore, but he also was banged up a decent amount during the year. So he missed some time with injury. But a under-recruited kid who has played well beyond his billing so far.
Yeah, that's a very uphill battle trying to build up that weight. To hear that he's coming from 160-ish makes a lot of sense. As I mentioned, as I was leading him in, really good accelerator. I think this might be a 4.3 guy. He moves really, really freaking well. That is what his biggest sell as a prospect is, that this is a very fluid, freaky athlete.
Yeah.
You watch him on tape, though, Ryan, and there are a lot of issues with technique, with his footwork, with his positioning, with his awareness at times. There were a couple of plays I was watching him. We had a very limited amount of film on him. So to watch the Liberty game was the game that I watched on him. I don't even know if we had another.
You had to see more Malik Willis, man. That's nice.
I was excited watching Malik Willis in that game, dude. He was playing really freaking well. But separately, though,
Yep.
Oh, by the way, guess who I'm taping a show with today that I'm sitting in as like a guest host because we're still trying to find him a co-host. Guess who I'm doing it with?
Can I have a hint? Can I have a hint?
Okay, I just said Malik Willis. Who would it be
Oh.
then if
His wide receiver, Demario Douglas?
No, it's Cordell Stewart.
Oh my God!
Yeah, exactly. I thought you would have figured that one out. I'm tempted to ask him. I'm tempted to ask him about Malik, but I don't. I think he wants to get to some other topics. But nonetheless, in that Liberty game, I think that he definitely had the advantage of his speed and his athleticism going against some pretty sloppy, low-tier receivers on that team.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a lot of times where I felt like he was a step slow. He was out of position very quickly. He's able to recover. He's very reliant on that athleticism. But we were talking about how Kelee Ringo is able to get himself back into positioning. I don't think that I think Garrett Williams does a lot worse job of this where he tries to over-rely on that athleticism to make up for his mistakes.
So he is an interesting player, Joe, because again, I would say if you went back to his 2020 film, I think 2020 film was better than 2021, if I'm being honest, because I do think that he was just dealing with some minor injuries and such that kind of limited some of his upside as an athlete in 2021, if I'm being completely honest. Because in 2020, I mean, no matter what game you put on, like I think of the Clemson game, for instance, like he's running stride for stride with guys like Amari Rodgers and more healthy Justin Ross. I actually know Justin Ross didn't play that year, but like the Joseph Ngata, who's kind of a height, weight, speed type of dude. So there's a lot of upside, I think, from athletically perspective. I think his straight line speed is good. I think his short area quickness is fantastic. Like, this is an off-man corner that I think can change direction incredibly well. The most impressive thing about him, though, in my opinion, I don't know if you really caught it in the Liberty game much, but he's a really good tackler for a guy that his size, man. Like, he is some really good flashes in that department. So you talk about the inside-outside ability potentially of Clark Phillips. I think Garrett Williams absolutely has that because I think that he has that physicality and the mirror match ability to play inside at nickel, and I think he could also last outside at full-time outside corner as well. So I like him a ton in those departments. I agree. He is definitely a more raw technical player compared to a Clark Phillips. Like Clark Phillips looks like he's just been playing corner forever, right? Like he has just been tutored at that position very well. While Garrett Williams, I think, has kind of relied a little bit on his athleticism at this point. So, but if he gets some technical refinement to his game, I see a physical player with good overall athleticism. This is a guy that I think is a day two prospect at the end of the day who has pretty solid ball skills, especially when you go back to 2020. Like he made a lot of plays with football, and he does have a background as a wide receiver coming out of Hickory Ridge. So I like Garrett Williams for what he is. Not quite the caliber of a Clark Phillips, in my opinion, but I think he is a day two type of player.
Yeah, day two is where I sit with him, and I would probably consider him at the very end of the top 50 to outside of the top 50. This is a mid to late second round, maybe early third round prospect. Just the technical issues are a big reason why. And I know that we talk a lot about buying into upside, and I even mentioned on yesterday's show of like why I was so high on Kelee Ringo is that Kelee Ringo, God damn it, I keep doing that. Kelee Ringo, the reason why I was so high on him is because I wanted to buy into the upside. And his athleticism is so freaking good that I can look past some of those technical deficiencies.
And he's 6'2 plus, so like he has a higher margin for error. Like I get it.
Higher, very different.
Because Garrett Williams, like if he has a bad technical side at the line of scrimmage, there are some plays where he can have the makeup speed to finish on a play. But Kelee Ringo is also 6'2 with makeup speed, right? So like
he has really long arms, and like you look at a Garrett Williams, if he falls out of position against a weaker receiver, he has the length and the recovery speed to make up for it. He can make up for those technical issues at the start of the play. I need to see a step forward for him before I can bump him into the top 50. A lot of things he needs to clean up. And I know it's tough at Syracuse, not to knock that coaching staff, but like how many guys have truly developed technically in that defense?
Yeah.
He's in a tough situation in that circumstance.
Man, they've had some dudes there too, as far as like athletes. I mean, like
I feel like they've all been pretty raw though. Like Cisco's been pretty raw.
No, to your point. I mean, like I think of like an Andre Cisco was a silly athlete on the back end, but like he was a guy that like fundamentally was not a great player as far as like his tackling ability and like that type of stuff. He was just winning off of natural ability and traits, right? So I agree with you. Those guys have not been developed incredibly well on the defensive side of the ball. I would even argue that, I mean, we talked about Matthew Bergeron on a show during the offensive tackle week, right? And he's another guy where I think he's winning off the traits a lot too at offensive tackle. So I don't think they've been incredibly well coached. I think that's a good point by you.
But regardless, sounds like we're on the same page with him. Late second, early third.
Yeah, I'd say he's a top 100 player for sure. You could sell me on him being a top 64 player when all said and done. Absolutely.
Okay. I think that's good enough to wrap us up on. Ryan, thank you as always. We are moving on to our next pairing and then our full top 5 lists. Cam Smith and Cam Hart. We've got the two Cams. Is that why you paired them together? Because their name is Cam?
No, I actually didn't even realize that until right now. So that was not.
You're such a liar. These coincidences are just like who else? Who else? Guard week, every guy had the same number. You're like, oh, that's so funny.
Joe, they're 2 6+ foot corners. Who else was I going to pick? Did you want to talk about Caillou Blue Kelly or Joey Porter Jr.? Like, you make the pairings, and then you can talk to me, sir. All right, you make the pairings next time.
I'm only gonna watch. You didn't specify Cam Smith enough, so I'm only going to watch the golfer Cam Smith, and then we're gonna evaluate him as a.
I didn't know Cam Smith was a golfer, so
I didn't know he was either until I quickly looked him up. Cam Hart is big as all hell.
Dude, he's almost 6'3" with 32+ inch arms. Yes, he's long. Former wide receiver recruit as well. So
I'm apparently a fake Notre Dame fan because I completely forgot that Cam Hart existed.
He was on Feldman's freak list as well. Number 38 on Feldman's freak
you were
list.
Geeking out this morning over that list.
Well, some of those numbers are completely fake. I love Bruce Feldman's work, but like, stop. Did you see the D tackle from Michigan with a 44-inch vert?
Why didn't we watch him?
Because he's not good. That's very, very simply put. I mean,
fair point.
There's no way he's if a 337-pound guy verticals 44 inches this draft cycle, I will delete my Twitter. It's out there. Clip it.
Okay.
Clip it.
We need. I'm not going to clip it because I'm lazy, or not because I'm lazy. I got a lot going on this week. I think you should clip it at the 27-minute mark, and you should post that because that would be.
I'll do that, man. You got. Okay, yeah. I'll do that. We got that.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. At Joe DeLeone, at Rise and Draft, at NFL Prospects Pod. Hit subscribe wherever you're tuning in. We will be back with our next pairing of corners.